I realized that my mission wasn't just sit and meditative positions and become awakening.
When people ask Neem Karoli Baba, how should I get enlightened? He would say,
Ultimately, the true nature is such that everything is interdependent, and we came to realize, we came to be awakened, from the illusion of separations.
Ram Dass said that the whole world is coming to Harvard to understand the mind. But the teachers of psychology, he was a psychology professor, he said, we are just as neurotic as everyone else. We are going to uh, explore words that could be relevant to our life.
Unconditional love is our natural state, something that we don't have to make an effort to maintain.
Haemin, I'd love to welcome you to this discussion, which we call Moved by Love. And it's a great honor to have you here. You're somebody that I deeply admire for your wonderful offerings into the world, the books, and you know, um, you're somebody that I agree with everything you say, which is so wonderful. So thank you so much for being here, firstly.
Thank you so much for inviting me. It's just honor, to be able to talk with you, and hopefully, we learn something from each other.
Yeah, yeah. I would definitely be learning from you. And for me, this is something very selfish because I get to do this and get to do what I really love, you know? So I'm really enjoying being in your presence and speaking with you and, exploring love, compassion, and how we can make this better world, a better world for ourselves and for everyone around us in your presence. So, I'm deeply appreciative and would like to kick off by asking you to just share a little bit about your story, like however that arises to you. Just so, people get a bit of context as to who you are, what you've done, a bit about your journey. I'd just love to kind of hear from your story, and you can start wherever you feel natural, but just share a little bit with our listeners.
Okay, I'm a Zen Buddhist monk from South Korea. I was born and raised in Seoul area, and then I went to United States to study. And then while I was doing my college and master degree work, I became really, really interested in ultimate questions. Why am I here? What's the purpose? Who am I? And then that led me to study religion. And then eventually I became ordained, and I got to learn from different teachers and went through different training. And then I finished my PhD and became university professor for a while. But later I became, rather than being academics, I wanted to have a real difference. So I started school for broken hearts in Korea. So I went back to my original country, home country, and then because I don't know whether you know, but Seoul, Korea happened to be the uh, going through some of the mental crisis, that is mental health crisis, highest suicide rate, a lot of depressions because of the super competitiveness uh, nature of the whole society at large. So I tried to support them, give them different group sessions, people who are going through just divorce or who just became diagnosed with cancers, people who lost their parents or loved one. I just bring them together and share their story, their heart. Um, and then I wrote a book called The Things You Can See Only When You Slow Down. And that book became, yes, that book became bestseller in Korea. It was number one for 40 weeks, and then it was then translated into English and many different languages throughout the world. And then now I'm very interested in, like Hanuman is doing, that is helping homeless people, making actual difference. So I'm looking forward to this conversation.
That's amazing. I'd like to ask you also, when you became ordained as a monk, you didn't just follow the traditional path of what a monk's path would be. Like for me, there's Buddhism or Dharma, and then there's engaged Buddhism or engaged Dharma, engaged Hinduism, engaged Sanatana. That for me, you seem to be an engaged person, that you want it to be relevant for in the setting that people are currently living in, where they are at. So rather than them coming to the teachings or the way uh, of themselves. You're bringing it into their setting. So, when I walk into a Waterstones and I see your book, I'm like, oh, thank God. There is something that people can access here in their own setting. Or even when you use the School of Broken Hearts, when you're talking about the people that you're helping and serving, it's where they're at and where they're feeling, and I almost feel of like how the Buddha traveled from place to place, meeting different communities and seeing them where they're at in their own settings. Could you speak to that of what it of your journey and why, if it's true, uh, you follow what I consider to be engaged Buddhism?
Yeah, I was not very happy being academics. I wasn't a good academics to begin with. I love, teachings, but I didn't, like you said, a lot of material that I was studying didn't really connect to my heart, connect to reality, what was going on around me. And also, as I was serving in my teacher's temple, I ended up just meeting all of my parishioners, and listening to their concern, especially people who just, who lost their parents or family members or had an accident or divorce, all those human concerns. Uh, and then I realized that my mission wasn't just sit and meditative positions and become awakening. Um, as I was just engaged with them, my heart was open, and I became more understanding and more compassionate. So I realized that we can uh, gain wisdom and have awakening experience through studying sutra, but also we can, at some point, we have to apply and to everyday living and get engaged. When your neighborhood is suffering in front of you, what good is that for you to preach about, the emptiness, Mahayana Buddhist, teachings of emptiness. You know what I mean? It's a better, for me to give them something to eat, some kind of
Yeah,
clothes for them to wear. So I just have to just remind myself that ultimately what I'm doing is to benefit other people, and because ultimately the true nature is such that everything is interdependent, and we came to be awakened, from the illusion of separations.
that's
So
beautiful.
yeah, that's why.
I came across, my background is financial market trading, so I was working as a trader when I came across Ram Dass, Richard Alpert, who traveled a lot, to India, and he came across Neem Karoli Baba. And when people asked Neem Karoli Baba, how should I get enlightened? He would say, go and feed the poor, go and serve people. And, almost to forget about your individual desire for enlightenment, but just to kind of go and serve others. And then, like a balloon rises, you will rise through serving others and just, not having that desire for anything, almost like a bodhisattva kind of ideal. So I really feel that that is, so freeing to serve others, and in what you've spoken about, in what you've said. So those words are also food to people, and those um, and academia. I also, went on a similar journey where I felt that, you know, academia can become a game just like anything else, where they're just trying to use flowery words to express things in a more complex way, and conversations going back and forward. But ultimately, Ram Dass said that the whole world is coming to Harvard to understand the mind. But the teachers of psychology, he was a psychology professor, he said we are just as neurotic as everyone else at Harvard. So I always loved that word that, everyone is looking, oh, but teach us about psychology, teach us about, but the teachers themselves is neurotic. So, then he traveled to the East to kind of learn about meditation and, explore that. So it's nice to hear you say that, because I have that personal connection to that engaged form, and, and God comes to the poor in the form of food. And
Right.
we can express that. So today we're going to do something which I thought about this last few days that I would love to do with you, and we're going to uh, explore words that could be relevant to our life. Some life on love, on courage, on anger, and I kind of sneakily and purposefully didn't want to share that with you before our conversation, because I just want to allow whatever arises to arise without any planning. So apologies for that. Please accept my thing, but I really wanted to do that in this way, and it just arose as a nice thing that we could do together and enjoy. So if I could share a word, and then you can please share a reflection of whatever you feel. And then if I have something that arises to me as you share that, then, maybe I'll share a little bit of something as well, and we can meander together for the next period of time to enjoy that for everyone is here. So, the first
Let's
word
do
I'd
it.
like to, yeah, let's do it. Let's do it. Beautiful. Perhaps before we begin, could you offer us a short invocation, or a short, um, few words, just to bless our meandering before we start. Just anything you'd like to share. It could be, a prayer or a word or thought, or, anything to bless the path ahead.
I always try to check my own intentions. What is my intention for doing this? Hopefully, my intention and also your Hanuman's intention is to benefit, whoever is listening to our program, so that they can gain some wisdom and also peace of their mind. Um, I hope that everybody can enjoy at the same time some kind of insight into their own mind and become much more happier and loving and kind.
That's beautiful. Thank you. So the first words I'd like to ask you about, and we can explore. And I saw it mentioned in your book, unconditional love. What is unconditional love? What arises for you? What would you like to share?
I think unconditional love is our natural state. Something that we don't have to make an effort to maintain. Like, for example, if you were to hate somebody or hold grudges, it takes a lot of effort. it's you need to put a lot of energy to hate somebody. But when you are loving, whether it's your loved one or your dog or cat or whoever, when we love, it doesn't take a lot of effort. It just happens very naturally and joyfully. And while we are doing that, we forget ourselves while we concerned, the wellness of the other persons, and thereby we feel connected. And in fact, we are one. in that sense. So in order to arrive at unconditional love, our job isn't to manufacture or produce unconditional love. Instead, take away that which is hindering, unconditional love to arise. It can be our own biases, our own labels that we give to people, uh, prejudice, and things that we think we already know, and yet we haven't met everybody, and but we are so easy to assume, oh, I know that kind of people, and then thereby we create this wall, and so that we can not experience this love that is that wants to overflow. Maybe it is also connecting to our childlike mind. When we are young, we didn't really care, whether the friends that we met, whether that person is people of different nationality or gender or religion or skin color. We just naturally become joyous, and there is innate friendliness and trust and care for each other. So we can just go back to our childlike mind, uh, and while putting away whatever that is stopping us from feeling unconditional love. uh, and then we will see, oh, it's already there. It's not something that I have to produce. It's already there, ready to go.
That's so beautiful. And um, for me, unconditional love is God, and it is also, like you said, the true nature of who we are, and that's where, when serving others, actually we are not also doing anything. All we are doing is just coming back into love. And it's kind of like the sun amongst the clouds. The sun is always there present, but sometimes we lose in cloudiness of negative thoughts, or something can lead us away from an understanding of love. But practicing service, and practicing good intention, actually helps to soften that understanding, to help us rest within that heart space. So I kind of think of three words, like there's spiritual practice, there's service, sadhana, and satsang. The third is sangha, to come together with other
Community.
people like this, together. We get together and we encourage and develop that. We have some various different practice, or we have that, and these three things which can lead us back into that state of unconditional love. However, from any tradition, from any path, from any way, from any people, can access that unconditional love, because it's who we are, loving awareness. Um,
Right. If
yeah,
I am to add one more thing, maybe what's stopping us from feeling unconditional love is our own fear. you know I think we either work out of love or out of fear. And when we feel fear, there is immediate sense of contractions, the sense of I stand apart from the rest of the world, and I concerned about my own safety, my own well-being, and thereby I want to protect myself, And so we feel a very concrete wall, between me versus the world. Um, in that space, if we can somehow, if you are a person of faith and trust, whether it's God or Allah or the Buddha, or higher power, something that you are not alone and you are always connected to the divine divinity. And then you realize that maybe this fear is unrational and irrational, and also like the way you've been, cared by the universe, you will continue to be cared and loved and be held. So I would say that, whenever we feel fear and we become mindful, oh, there's a fear rising, yeah, rather than just unconsciously give in to the fear and then make a decisions out of fear, and thereby you create the distance between yourself and the world. I think it's a very good idea if we can just oh, this fear is rising. Oh, I'm about to make this decision out of it. And maybe I can shift gently, to love and trust. Uh, yeah.
That's a beautiful reflection, and I guess already led into the second word, which was fear. That's beautiful. So we've covered something on fear there, and the thing that comes up for me immediately is I've studied many times the Bhagavad Gita, and the dialogue is about despondency, or kind of Arjuna is speaking to Krishna, who there is about to be a war, and he doesn't want to fight, and the first teaching is about fearlessness. And if you have a right view of the nature of reality, and if you have the true understanding, then you cultivate a fearless state. So actually, fearlessness and spirituality actually has quite a lot of close connection, isn't it? Like that arises for me, and it's interesting that the Gita talks about fearlessness as the first teaching to cultivate, based on a view of that we are all one, and that this whole reality, and what is it? And I guess from a Buddhist perspective, it would be uh, impermanent. Like engaging in that idea that this is impermanent. What are you scared of? Why is it that way? So we've got unconditional love, and we've got something on uh, fear. Let me move to another word, karma.
Oh, well, when I was younger, I used to, think about karma in terms of some kind of retributions. It's something that I didn't do correctly in my previous life, and therefore I am undergoing this suffering, right? Uh, but now I see karma more as habitual tendency. Whatever that we do repeatedly again and again, then it gains its own force, its own power, and thereby it become habitual. And so I give this example to my follower parishioners that when we go to shopping mall, there are many many stores. Like there's a cosmetic store, there's a clothing store, and there is the bookstore. Large shopping mall. And but notice that you end up just going two or three in a store that you like. It's not like you go like 100 different store. You end up just going two or three that you really like. Likewise, like some people ask, oh, so what happened, like when we pass away, when we die, will I go to heaven, will I go to hell? It's depending on your natural habitual tendency. If you are attracted to goodness of other people, then naturally you'll be pulled into the people with the same kind of vibrations. Whereas, if your inclination is to be very hateful and jealous and angry all the time, then naturally you'll find it very attractive in a place where people, like to argue, and people like to become jealous and petty and angry. So I would say that karma, it, it's rather than thinking in terms of destiny or fate, uh, we should just maybe we can think of it as, what we do repeatedly every day, and that will determine our future.
That's beautiful. I really, even as I said the word to you, the thought that came into my mind was if I was walking past and I see somebody's, wallet on a table, and if I thought, okay, that's nice, I'll take that wallet. And put it in my pocket. It must be some nice things, some nice money and things I can have. The very thought of that will create a pattern, a scar on my mind, which then ingrains deeply. Sanskar is the word in Sanskrit, and it scars that mind so that you then next time will be slightly more inclined towards taking it. And then after two or three thought processes like that, I ultimately might pick up the wallet and put it in my pocket, and now it's mine. So, do you agree that karma in that way, like habitual practice of something, will create the results that we develop? Yeah.
Absolutely,
Yeah.
absolutely. Yeah. We may first just have a thought, maybe I can pick that up. And then, slowly it can turn into actions, right? So, as you said, it may not just happen all at once, it's accumulative. And then once that we go beyond the tipping point, then we might do something that we later will regret. Um, Also, as we get older, we think about not only how other people will judge us or think of us or catch ourselves doing something wrong, but we also think about how I view myself, doing something like stealing or lying or something that that's not right. So I think it's naturally, as we grow older, we may have a yawning to live a life with integrity. And so that from that yearning, we can also develop, sense of fearlessness that you talked about, and also, deep concern for other people. Whatever I am doing to others, I hope that I am also, I would like to receive, the same, degree of concern. So I think it's important to, think about not just, how this is going to impact upon my future life, but also, right there and there, how do I think about this? How does that influence in a positive way or negative way to my mind, to my own sense of well-being? Uh, Even if nobody sees me stealing, I saw that, right? And so that's not right, right? We know that's not right, and then you have to live with that feeling, and you don't want to live with that feeling, right?
Agree. Agree. The next word is friendship or friends.
I think the friendship is, blessing. It's one of the most important blessings in our lives. Um, they reflect, you know, what's the word that I've been looking for? They're like a mirror, you know. Uh, they they shows us not only our beautiful side, but also very vulnerable and quote unquote negative side. Uh, in other words, when we can become who we are, and be accepted by our friends.
For me, as you mentioned, such a blessing that, a lot of studies will show now that our social groups or our connection actually directly correlated to our well-being. So those with strong social connections or different groups, and it might be that you have a group that you go to the gym with, or your friends that you studied with, or the friends that you meditate with, or you serve with on a Tuesday night when you go out to do food distribution. And the strength, our well-being is directly connected to the increased connections that we have. That scientifically, interconnectedness is the nature of our self and the well-being. So as we expand from, ourself to the close family and friends that we grew up with, that we are given friends and we expanded friends. So I have so many friends, and they are, for me, my life, because I am them and they are we, and we expand that, and I feel so blessed by friends, and not just friends that from spiritual circle, just the foolish friends of school that we have fun and we joke together and we meet and see each other and hug each other, and I feel like sometimes from people engaged in spiritual path, they sometimes want to forget or differentiate that this is higher and this is lower. Often new practitioner will say, okay, this is I'm now into this. So, those people are of a different understanding and they think, but actually Ram Dass said, if you think you're enlightened, go spend a week with your family. Go spend a week with your and be with them, and and then you'll realize how cultivated. So for me, friendship is, actually spiritual path. It's extending friendship to all living beings, and my goal is to be without enemies, to have friends, to have many friends, cultivate friendship everywhere. Letters of friendship or communicating friendship. I hope we will be friends for life. I hope we will be cultivating that. So that's what arises with friendship.
Yeah, I think, for me, friends represent a source of happiness and joy. Um, Especially, we can take off this mask, social mask we are required to wear because we have to do our role. We have to play the role, whether it's the role as a parent, well, role as a boss, role as a, students. I don't know, whatever the role that you are asked to play, and then in front of your friend, you don't have to play those role. You can take those masks off and just show your not just good side but also ridiculous side or idiosyncratic side, and yet your friends will still have positive regards. They will still like you, they will still accept you, and even if you become very vulnerable and tell them some of the hurts that you just felt at work or in a family situation, and still that your friends will be there. They're not going to abandon you. They will not run away just because you have done something what maybe society says ethically wrong or whatever. Your friends will be still there and understanding and standing right next to you. So and also when it comes to spirituality, without the support of friends, meditating together, serving the community together, it's impossible to advance. It's very hard to just to do it by yourself. It is the community, the community of friends that we commit to sit together and or work together, and that's where the you can accomplish so many things because of your friends. If you were to do it all by yourself, there will be a time that you say, oh, I'm just too tired, I don't want to do it today, things like that. However, if when you know your friend is waiting, then you have to stand up and go there, in spite of the feeling that I don't want to do it, today. So you will be able to keep going, rather than become, betraying your own vow or betraying your own intentions. So I think friendship is essential, not just for our well-being, but for spiritual practice as well.
So beautiful. That's so beautiful. Thank you. Greed. What
Greed,
arises with greed?
I think, human being, we suffer from this two condition. That is, we want that which we don't have right now, and we suffer because we don't want that which we have, that which we already have. So for those things that we don't have, we want to go and get it, and then we want to control it and possess it and do whatever we want. And those things that we already have and yet we don't like, that we want to push that away and get rid of it, and stay away from it. So this two tendency, I cannot just be happy at where I am. Instead, we always finding, there's also better things over there. Grass is always greener over there. So to realize that maybe what I'm really looking for is the peace of my mind, ultimately. Of course, when we get what we want, it's very exciting, right? But this excitement doesn't last. Especially, if you cannot share that excitement with other people, it's not as fun, Imagine that you want the lottery, a lot of money, and yet you cannot tell to anybody, in the whole world. You cannot share it. It's horrible, that's like you become the loneliest person. So I think we like it, when we share, and so I guess what I'm trying to say is that rather than just trying to find happiness in a distant future, when we get what we want, then I will be finally happy. Instead, I think we should practice gratitude and see all the wonderful things that's happening in our lives already. Whether it's the fact that the air is is there and helping us, supporting us, and think about your heart. Heart is beating, but we don't put any extra effort to make sure my heart is beating, on a regular basis, right? Like, how grateful it is, and think about being able to have food, and being able to receive text message from your friend, you know, a lot of things we can be incredibly grateful for. And from that, space, I think it invites more blessing, more things to be grateful. And so that rather than we direct our minds to future and thinking that getting, what we don't have will make us happier in the future. Instead, maybe what we are looking for is what we already have. That is peace of our mind, and then a loving heart, which we already have.
That's beautiful. I love that you said the grass always appears greener. As you said that, I thought back to once when I was younger. I was traveling from London to Barbados, and when I went to the airline, there was an airline poster which we saw there, and it was of Barbados, the beach, with beautiful sand and blue ocean and palm tree, and kind of looking at that. And it was an airline advertisement. And then when I arrived in Barbados, I saw the picture of Big Ben on the same advertisement, same branding with Big Ben Tower, the clock, and Parliament Square in London and Westminster, and and it just I remember thinking that back then that this is something, the Londoners all wishing to go to Barbados, Barbados wants to come to London, and airline is profiting from the two things, and kind of what we don't have, we think we want, and then often one of my dear friends is a very successful sports person, incredibly successful, one of the great players of the world, and he said, I wouldn't wish fame on my worst enemy, but yet millions, if not billions, of people would aspire to be in his position or in his situation. And it's very interesting that, from his perspective, now that he's there, he's like, oh, this is awful. I can't even step out for a coffee without, people bombarding me. So I think, there is that saying, isn't it? Be careful what you wish for, or you might just get it. Yeah. And yeah, I think okay. So there is also Mahatma Gandhi said there is enough in the world for every man's need, but not enough for a single man's greed. And that really resonates with me. Like I feel like
Right. I talk about that in my, book, When Things Don't Go Your Way. Yeah,
yeah,
like my third book.
yeah,
That's absolutely true. Yeah, um, if you think about it, how ridiculously we spend, waste, some of the resources that we could have directed to make the actual impact. But because of our vanity, because of our fear, we are spending, so much money on, weapons and, on like things that is not essential, while our neighbor or people in different countries are suffering greatly. So, yeah, absolutely.
where I live here in the UK, uh, one of the things we speak about a lot with our work in food poverty is that 40% of food in this country is being thrown in the dustbin. So you think about the production of so much food, and importing food, and it's coming on shelves, and then because it doesn't sell at a certain price, often that food can be thrown in the dustbin or domestically wasted. We have money, so we buy lots of food. It comes in our fridge, but then we eat out somewhere, so that food gets thrown in the dust. So domestic waste as well as store waste is so significant and so high, and also waste at farm level where food won't sell, so they, because maybe it's a bruised apple or something like that, and that's not collected and utilized. So our as a society, our greed and desire for these certain standard of things, and where to have when we want, means that many people will go hungry. The children will not be able to go to school on a full stomach and well eaten because of a collective greed or collective vanity, as you said. I think that's the right way, and so that lead me on to the next word, which I feel is one of the remedies of that. So we are exploring negative as well as positive together, intermingling both. Compassion. What arises for you when we say the word compassion?
I think compassion, I think it first requires attentions, you are willing to pay attention to those who are suffering. It's so easy for us to turn our head around, away, and we don't want to look at, people who are uh, suffering, people who are hurt, um, and just want to watch Netflix and something fun, instead. But we can be, you know, if we can just pay our attention to those who are hurting, then it's very natural for us to uh, try to help them. I think it is within our own nature to help those who are suffering. Um, like sometimes, they suffer because they are ignorant, especially in a psychological sense, like a mental like sense. they assume that the world is, a terrible place and people are just, selfish and um, and self-serving, and and if you view the world as such, then of course the world will appear to you in that manner. In other words, if you are if you have an intention to find the world that is very self-centered, then surely that world will rise and to meet your demand, so to speak. So um, but even for those who are suffering because of this kind of misconceptions, that is how we see the world, uh, it's not necessarily objectively that world is out there. Instead, what we bring to uh, the condition that we bring, it is not to say that we become oblivious to people's suffering, but what I'm trying to say here in this context is to say, um, we generate unnecessary suffering, and for that, I think we can still have compassion, because they are not fully aware. Their mindfulness isn't at the level where they can become emotionally aware, self-aware, so to speak. Okay. Compassion for me is being willing to sit next to the person who's suffering, rather than turning my head, away, not wanting to see people who are suffering. But I feel, responsible, and also I want to help them, and therefore I pay attention to their needs. Um, and sometimes it requires just sitting there together. I don't need to do, I don't need to have a magical solution to solve the problem. Maybe what they really want is, somebody to validate, their own suffering and witness, what they are going through. Um, when I first started, my kind of, school for broken heart, I thought that I have to come up with some solution for every problem. But then I realized that, people generally already know, what they had to do to go through, to resolve the situation. It's just that nobody was there to listen and also validate, what they've been, going through. They felt hopelessly alone and lonely, in their own suffering. So if we can just acknowledge where they're coming from and what kind of difficulty that they are having, and try to see from their point of view rather than my, according to my understanding, according to my traditions, rather than imposing, onto them, we take our shoes off and then put it into their own shoes, and then see from their perspectives. It's easy for us to say, oh, maybe they are not well educated, or maybe they are not as emotionally, aware or self-aware. Therefore, they are having this kind of, problems. But, we all have our own limitations. We come to this world with our own sets of self-imposed limitations. Maybe my limitation might be somewhat more subtle and more refined, but nevertheless I still do have one too. So and people who are suffering, we all struggle with our own self-imposed limitations, and therefore it requires compassion. Also compassion should be directed to ourselves too. We often forget that we have inner critics. That is, ever since we were young, our parents or our friends, our society or a teacher, criticize. Oh, you are not good enough. You have to. You're supposed to get a better grade, or you are not beautiful enough. You're not tall enough. Then we internalize those kind of comments and thinking that there's something wrong with us. I'm not worthy. I'm not beautiful, and I become very, afraid of people's criticisms, and then when our inner critics is active, then rather than becoming like a friends to our own state of mind, our inner critics becomes our worst enemy, right? Like, you are the you are the horrible person, and you'll never amount to anything. You will just, there you go. There's a proof that you are not good. We look for that. So when we do that, we have to catch ourselves and wait. I am listening to this inner critic, this crazy, thoughts, always, negative thoughts, criticizing not only other people, but also about myself. So I have to just, okay, catch it and then wait, rather than being very harsh, towards myself, maybe, let me just practice self-compassion, like the way my friends would see me. I should see my own shortcomings. So there is a feeling of gentleness and acceptance. I know maybe you have shortcomings, but that's not the whole picture. There are lots of really amazing aspect of you uh, within you, and I see that too. That's what makes humanity. If you have shortcomings, maybe that's what will allow us to connect to other people too. So yeah.
That's so beautiful, so profound. Thank you for that. Like that, I feel accepting one's shortcomings as self-compassion, as compassion, practicing compassion, and compassion for me is the highest dharma. That is the highest, thing, greatest thing we can do for self as well as the world. There was once an instance in one of our food distributions where this gentleman came to the food distribution with a brick, and he was like breathing heavily and agitated and kind of coming up in that way, and our volunteers became a little bit frightened and were worried, what is this gentleman doing? Because we are serving many people who could be influenced by drugs or alcohol, or not in a good mental state of balance that they know what they're doing. And so this young man came running up, and we got a bit, kind of careful, protective. And I asked, Why are you holding this brick?" We asked the young man, why are you holding this brick?" And he said, "I was about to throw the brick through a betting shop." Um, and we asked why, and he said, "Because I'd rather go back to prison today." So he said, when I left prison, the guard, as he was leaving, said to him, uh, he swore at him and said, "I'll see you later. You'll be back here soon." So he said, "I came and I had no positions. I've got nothing. I didn't have anything. And I was about to throw the brick through this betting shop, but then I saw this food distribution. And the message was love all, feed all, which he saw this people gently serving people and just giving that time to people to serve. And, it changed, it softened his anger from that presence, not from the food, just from being present, of seeing the people. And there's that funny thing that we sometimes see online where you watch this video and it says, keep staring at this thing, and like a purple bear would run across the screen, and you don't see the purple bear. That thing or something. I can't remember if it's a purple bear or whatever it is, but we don't see that thing because we're so focused on what we're looking at. And I think like what you said rings true in that scenario, that we are so focused on personal growth and wealth creation and in desire and personal enjoyment that we miss what is happening around us. If a child is going to school hungry, or if people are suffering in another part of the world in disaster, or in climate problem or Gaza or anywhere, we can easily turn the other cheek and kind of not see the suffering around us. So compassion for me is Dharma. For me, is the root of Dharma is compassion. So maybe I can ask you that the next word is Dharma. What does Dharma mean to you? What arises when we say Dharma?
Well, Dharma in Buddhist sense is uh, the law of nature, the truth of reality. So, to be able to penetrate and see what is real and what is not real. What is real, according to Buddhist teaching, is that everything is one, interconnected. And if we see the world through the lens of language, words, then it appears to us, it mistakenly appears to us that everything has its own identity, separate identity, whether it's book or a lamp or a person or a car, as soon as we put a word label onto that, then that object, it seems to have independent quality to it. But that is not true. The language we just human came up with, so that we can communicate to each other. It is kind of heuristic device that we are using, but unfortunately, we forgot that aspect, and we begin to see the world through language, through words, and thereby we see a lot of separations. My own identity versus your identity, as though they are not linked. So I talk about yesterday. Like there are so many people who are so obsessed about being right, when especially when it comes to the world of politics. In Korea is very much divided. One half is very conservative and another half is very liberal, and they are constantly arguing and fighting. But I tell them that in order for you to be right, there has to be people who are wrong. you know if there isn't these people who are wrong, then you cannot exist. The right people, people who are right cannot exist. So the people who are wrong, you know, they're, they allow you to exist. Without them, you cannot be right. You are interdependent. You see, but we always forget that. We assume that those people are the wrong side, and we hope they can be just eliminated altogether. If that's the case, then whatever the position that you have, right position no longer becomes right. So being able to see how everything is interdependent and arise interdependently, also rising, um, and from that understanding we should go out and do our own duty. I think that's another translation of Dharma, our own missions, our own work, not from the place of separateness, but from the place that how everything is interdependently, rising. My happiness uh, is interdependent. It's related to my family. Like for example, if one of our family members is sick, I cannot be happy. No matter how wonderful things happening. Um, uh, and also, if one of our friends is doing well, then naturally I become happy, joyous. Everything is kind of interconnected. So from that understanding, if we can just go out and do our own mission, then I think we can make a difference.
So beautiful. Um, I understand Dharma to be on multiple levels. because we have, like you said, our individual dharma, which is, maybe our family dharma, our life, our own mission, our individual work. But and then there's also the paths that we follow, like the Buddha Dharma, or Hindu Dharma, or Jain Dharma, or Christian Dharma, or Islamic Dharma. But then also, I feel like there's a universal Dharma, that yeah, like you said, our nature, our living that out to the truest. So, we often use the example of, and that's what Go Dharmic really is trying to achieve, is that universal responsibility, or that thing. If the Dharma of fire, it could be to produce heat or to produce light, and if the Dharma of sugar is to be sweet, then the Dharma of humanity should be to be humane, to live out our humanity, to live out that which makes us truly human. And like Martin Luther King says, I believe that the moral arc of the universe is towards goodness, and that essentially we have that goodness within our nature, and like that unconditional love that we spoke about. And so our Dharma is to be in that. And when we are away from that, we feel unnatural, we feel unhappy, we feel sad. So we actually have to move back to that central state of goodness and truth and happiness and love, which is the natural state of our being. So for me, Dharma uh, is very universal. It's a very thing, but actually very difficult to translate into English where we're having this conversation, because not many words. So it could be duty, it could be, a way of being, it could be so many things to different people. So ultimately, uh, Dharma is that which creates a situation of love for all beings. And whatever creates love and happiness for all beings is Dharma, and that which does not create it is adharma, the opposite of dharma. So, yeah, that this is the area. What about non-violence? What does non-violence mean?
Long time ago, I came across this person who did a lot of, human rights work, and he would demonstrate, out on the street, fought and fought and fought, for uh, to support, people with no power and things like that. But he did it out of hate, hate for the people with power, how they can be so selfish and so brutal, uncaring. And then as he was doing it, um, he realized that his mind became really, uh, dark and unhappy and even violent. That is, I wish I can just, achieve my goal quicker, by being violent or, doing things, uh, making some actual, quote unquote, actual impact, so that their voice can be heard, receive more attentions, more sensational, then he realized that feeling of negativity actually consumed him. And then at one time, as he was lying down on the street to like fighting, so much hatred and in his heart was eating him up. And then he realized, if I continue to be like this, it's going to destroy me first. So then, he stopped everything and he started studying theology. He just said, I don't think I can do this anymore. And so he just went back and studying theology instead, and tried to do it from the place of love, you know, and then try to practice nonviolence, nonviolent to himself first and also to other people. And then so he is doing exact same kind of human rights, support work. However, instead of doing it out of hatred or anger, he's doing it out of love and concern for those who do not have the privilege or power or resources. Um, so uh, yeah,
That's really a beautiful story, and I think for those who are trying to increase non-violence or welfare for other living beings, the energy of hatred or anger can actually increase not only within themselves but also in the world, isn't it? That we are adding to the violence, we are adding to the trauma or difficulty in the world through bringing more mental and linguistic and energetic negativity to the world. So I really concur with that. That the way has to the journey is as important as the destination when it comes to not increasing non-violence in the world. And for me, the word in Sanskrit, ahimsa, non-harming, which Gandhi, really brought to attention, is a form of practicing love. Ahimsa param dharma. Ahimsa is the highest dharma. It's considered in the ancient texts, and also in Dhammapada it speaks of ahimsa, non-harming, as such a beautiful principle of a goal of life to try to reduce suffering through any means, even with our footsteps, with our words, with our kindness. Not many people can argue with this way. Like if we could have philosophical arguments with people on what is the nature of God or the nature of reality or the nature of mind. All of this thing can be debated very much with different philosophical views and stuff. But should we cause less harm to nature? No, not many sane people would argue that we should destroy nature or the planet or the forests, or although we act different to our view, I don't think many people will disagree that we should protect the forest, that we I read a shocking fact recently that of all wild mammals, only less than 4% now are wild mammals. Of all the
wow,
mammals on Earth, only less than 4%. So when we think about 96% is farm animals, factory farms and farm animals, and human beings, and only
wow,
4%, all of the wild tigers, the elephants, the lions, the wild buffalo, and wild nature in all of the forests and jungles of the world, it's less than 4% living beings. And so when do we stop? I feel, 4% or 3% or 2% or 1, that, future generations won't see these wild animals. And as a human being with intelligence and design, I feel in a loving way, this direct violence that we have created in the last 70 years or 80 years, the mass reduction of nature, is happening in our lifetimes. And therefore, in the most loving way, we should apply non-violence through means as well as end, journey and destination of how we can become good custodians of the earth and of nature, of animals, of nature, and reducing harm through every way in how we. Gandhi would say, thought, word, and deed. How can thought, word, and deed be applying non-violence and ahimsa, and really when we talk about interconnection and interdependence, if we truly understand our connection, then we won't harm the other because they are us and we are them. So I feel non-violence is actually very spiritual quality, isn't it? Like that we have a view which we engage in, that I understand you to be me, so I won't ultimately harm you. We are one, and their non-violence is a very spiritual quality which Gandhi, when the British were causing so much suffering for people in India and around the world through colonialism. He said, I love the British and I want to love them so they leave as friends. You know, and that's very powerful, to rather than kill them because there's only small number of British people in India ruling the entire huge population. So violent means could have, you know, helped remove them very quickly, you could say. But what legacy would that create? He wanted a legacy of friendship and, universal acceptance. So, the next words that I'd like to share you, and maybe we explored a little bit on this, but I think it's probably really nice that we've mentioned it before, but I think for everybody's personal acceptance, a really good thing to explore. Shortcomings, our own shortcomings.
I think, we all have shortcomings, and but the work is not just to improve and become overcoming our own shortcoming, but also to accept our own shortcomings. And by accepting my own shortcomings, I become much more compassionate and understanding towards similar shortcoming or any shortcoming for that matters. You know, when I see my own, ridiculous side aspect of me, that's not very proud moment. We all have that moment that you are not very proud of. Then you can reflect and realize, oh, other people might also have that moment too, right? So um, this becomes opportunity for us to become much more. And at the same time, we also have to pause and ask, according to whom, this is shortcomings. Maybe we thought this is shortcoming because that's how my parents taught me, but they have their own particular conditioning, their cultural hangups, their own values that might be different from my values or this contemporary, societal values. And because things are changing all the time, so rather than seeing it as a shortcomings, maybe if you can just turn around and become, hey, maybe I am, maybe I have this shortcoming, but maybe it's not correct to label it as a shortcoming. It becomes a shortcoming if we cannot accept it. But if you are kind of, proud and acknowledge what we already have, then it stops being a shortcomings. Um, what would be the good example? If you think like, for example, I am like 170, centimeter tall, and when I went to United States, or whenever I go to the Netherlands, for example, I feel like I'm very short guy, right? Um, and then if you see that as a shortcoming, then I guess it is shortcoming. But if you just acknowledge this is who I am and I'm perfectly fine with my height, and not only that, whenever I go to flying, whenever I have to fly to another country, having a shorter leg is actually a big plus. What's wrong with that? So if you just can accept it, rather than hating what it is, then maybe shortcoming stop being a shortcoming.
That's so beautiful and so so honest. And I'm also 5'8", so extra leg room is also nice for me on the airplane. Uh, I love what you said. I love what you said there. And there's a verse in the Mahabharata, the ancient Indian epic, which says, "Dharma is hidden in the cave of our hearts." And it's not something that, any particular, like texts are good, the sutras are good, and everything is wonderful, but everything is written for a particular time, moment, and how we understand those things needs to be applied with intelligence and uh, our own hearts in every circumstance. So it's not rigid and dogmatic and a certain way for certain thing. And for what arises for me, basically on shortcomings and also on what you said there is that our way is in our heart. And if we are true and honest to that, then any shortcomings are part of that journey. And a few steps down the mountain will find an easier path to go up the other way. So, often, just as an example, yesterday we have this is a very recent thing. We have two offices in central London, but one of the offices we haven't been using very much. And for me, I'm thinking, okay, how do we grow this? How do we make more people come, more do all this kind of thing? And we took the decision to give up one of the office spaces because we thought, okay, instead of to pay more rent for this location, we can feed more people, or we can reduce our administrative expenses to that. And I really felt it was like a shortcoming of mine. I'm failing here. I'm not utilizing this space for the benefit of the organization and the work and something. I felt it was a real, loss, almost a personal loss of what we are trying to do. I felt that feeling yesterday. And I feel like loving that shortcoming is such a powerful, uh, practice. And perhaps it should be more like, we have an in breath and we also have an out breath. Just because, there is goodness, there will also be badness. There will be right, there will be wrong that we'll achieve in our life. And, the shortcoming can be just a retraction. So, when a muscle is developing, we have that feeling, don't we, that the muscle is almost broken or damaged to get stronger. And so shortcoming, when viewed as a necessary part of the path, rather than, a sin or a negative kind of, thing, it's just actually a natural part of growth and breathing in and breathing out and breathing in and breathing out. And I kind of look at that shortcoming as an in-breath. It's just
Right.
something that, a general natural retraction.
Right. I mean, like think about all those amazing artists and people. I heard that, like somebody like Luciano Pavarotti, he was not able to read the music, and yet he became the most famous tenor, of last century, right? Or Tom Cruise, he cannot he has a what is it, dialectic, he cannot read the script, very carefully. Or Jackie Chan,
Dyslexic. Yeah.
yeah, and Jackie Chan, he wasn't educated enough to read all those Chinese scripts, but he memorized everything, you know. And I have a friend, he's a baseball player, he's very successful, but he was able to become as such because he had a small injury, here. And in order to get over that shortcoming, in the process of overcoming that shortcoming, actually he became, uh, amazing baseball player. So, we cannot say that shortcoming is all bad. Actually, it helped us to, grow into a bigger person, and you will become successful because of your shortcoming.
That's beautiful. And I think, we as a society and as a community really need to understand shortcomings in a better way. Like I see, especially on the internet, there was recently an Indian podcaster, and he came on a show and he said some, pretty silly things on a TV show, something quite rude, in fact. But what was more disgusting was the way the public vilified him, and was saying so many negative things, giving him threats, giving him thing. And this is a young guy who's got a lovely business, podcast, and he's actually spread some lovely messages to people. And yet the way that people treated him post this thing, I felt was more disgusting than what he said and what. he did because online internet can be such a place of harassment and easy. You don't see the person, so you don't feel the human emotion. You don't feel that way. It's just easy to throw these harmful arrows or things. And I was like, wow, he has shortcomings. I have shortcomings. Everybody has some mistakes, and somehow, yes, there is law, there is requirement for order, there's requirement for all of these things. But can we be more loving in our, like the vilification is too great in today's thing. Could you speak to that? Like, how do you feel the way could be, that we could as a society embrace a more loving approach to other people's shortcomings?
I think if we can just see our own, uh, the shortcoming, then we realize that, oh, I'm not that perfect either. Who am I to criticize other people when I also have same amount or even worse of shortcomings? Uh, it's easy for us to forget that we are all human beings and same, limitations. We have all different kinds of limitation, but limitation nonetheless. So I would say that just look at your own self, look at your own mirror. And before criticizing other people, are you sure you don't have those? Maybe like I would say, Carl Jung might say, maybe it's within your own shadow. That's why you are so angry. Although, maybe I one time I talked to my, Buddhist nun friend, and she said that she hates anybody who is so, uh, authoritarian and, telling people what to do, And then I I told her that maybe you do have a tendency within your shadow that maybe you don't want to acknowledge it, but that you also want to be in these very people with power, just that you don't want to admit that that's your secret desire. And because you don't want to admit it, and whenever you see people behaving as such, then that's bothering you, because I don't get to do it, but they do. And therefore I feel angry and even jealous. So I think it's important for us to check in with ourselves. Maybe we do have the similar desire, and that's why that kind of thing triggers, in us. So yeah.
Thank you. That was beautiful. The next one is spiritual practice, or in Sanskrit, the word is sadhana, your spiritual practice.
When I was younger, I thought that there is a set of spiritual practice I must carry out, and such as spending hours on sitting meditation, um, or reciting Buddhist sutras, or bowing to the Buddha, all this elements of quote unquote spiritual practice. And then as I became more mature, I realized that everything can become your spiritual practice, especially if you do it with your love and compassions. Uh, and especially while we carrying out our daily activity and we come across things that trigger us, makes us very angry and or hurt, then that's an opportunity for us to become, wait, what's happening in my mind? Let me just take a deep breath and and examine, what that is, and then look into the cause of those feeling, those emotions. Um, so rather than having a designated set of practices, for me, I go out and live my just day-to-day life, And then whenever I have this small, strong negative emotion arises within me, and that's the invitation for me to do um, dig deeper and see where I'm not free.
Almost like what you mentioned is like your life is your spiritual practice, right? Like Ram Dass would say, it's all grist for the mill. So everything is a grist for the mill of awakening that, we can use it all, like this conversation or, making a coffee or washing the dishes or serving food to people. Or it doesn't have to be a mantra or, recitation or something. In fact, um, I, I still feel though that those, for me personally, when I'm in intentional practice in that space, it reminds me much more deeply that if I can take that out into the world, it, really uh, polishes the mirror of the heart to be able to go and do that. Like almost the word for temple in Hindi is mandir. Man is mind, and dir is calm. So a place to calm the mind, to enable us to have that practice is so uh, much nicer. Whereas being on the tube in London can be quite a busy, difficult place. It's very hot sometimes. The air quality is low, and people are climbing on top of each other. So it's almost like that practice. If you have a solid practice in the morning or in your life that you cultivate, then when you're going out into the world, it enables you to be slightly stronger and more capable of dealing with it. When you do your practice now, so that you need it when you don't have a chance to practice it, when you need it, then it will come to you or be something of use. So uh, I'm still very much, in love with the exploration, but maybe I'm, still in that phase, but taking it into the world and keep going back. And so, kind of, I feel like just like in meditation, when the mind drifts, you love that drift, and you then try to bring it back lovingly. In the world, also, I lose that d divine view or that loving view, and then try to love it and bring it back again. So, in a conversation with a friend or a loved one or a family member is the easiest trigger to get angry and, kind of, oh, okay, now, I'm off track with my path. How do I bring it back? I think having Gandhi referred to it actually as a staff in your life that uh, he used to recite the name of Ram. So he would say Ram, Ram, Ram was his mantra. So he would say the name of Ram is the staff of my life. And so he would have that staff and use that as a practice in his uh thing. So ultimately the whole world becomes Ram. So you see everybody, every living being as that divine being. So for me, that spiritual practice is there. I was going to come to the next word actually was meditation, but I feel like we've covered it a little bit there, in this one actually, because we've, I guess under spiritual practice, meditation is also there, unless there's anything else you want to share on that word, or do you feel like we've covered it?
When I was younger, I meditated to arrive at specific kind of experience. I look for some peaceful and serene and amazing experience. And then as I became older and become having some kind of awakening experience, I realized that, um, the whole point of meditation is to see everything, entirety of our lives uh, is non-dual, that is one, and which means even the negative experience, the feeling of restlessness or feeling of jealousy or hatred, whatever that is, um, that is also part of meditations, so rather than saying, "Oh, I don't like a negative state of my mind," like feeling uh, um, like uneasiness or um, you know, feeling like I restlessness, whatever that is that you are running away from. Uh, I think the ultimate goal, ultimate practice of meditation is acceptance. So if you can just truly accept, even if the whatever the state of your mind is uneasy, then immediately you realize that the cause of my suffering wasn't necessarily the very experience of what I was having. Instead, my resistance to that experience that created suffering. So I make sure my resistance, I try to turn that into acceptance. Then I just allow it, all this, maybe the crowdness, like in maybe London too, how everybody is so jam packed, and maybe smell of other people, or loud noise, whatever that is, allow it, so that can be great spiritual practice and a way to meditate. Allow it.
Ah, that's beautiful. The next point I wanted to discuss is difficulty. Like many people come to me when things are not going well for them. Your new book is called, well, the first one was, uh, the things you can see only when you slow down, which I have here. And then we have Love for Imperfect Things. They're very beautiful. The artwork is very beautiful. And the latest one is When Things Don't Go Your Way. I have it on my Audible actually on the audiobook. When things don't go your way, difficulty. A lot of people come to me with that. I was running a business and I lost all the money, and the things with my partner didn't work out, or I loved this girl and I had a divorce, and now we have this tough situation, and they go through difficulty and strife. Um, Perhaps as one of the last topics that we discuss, one more after this, what could you share on difficulty and this new book? What is it aiming to share with people, and difficulty in general?
I think it's opportunity, for us to grow, rather than seeing as a hindrance and something that's a negative and something that I wish I could avoid. Life is giving me this opportunity to spiritually grow, emotionally become much more mature. So I would say, like when we suffer, we become much more mindful of what's happening and think about, from other people's perspective. All those people that I've been hurting, and I never thought about it until I get hurt, right? And then I remind myself, oh, that's right. I guess this is what that person must have felt, when I hurt them. Uh, Also, like you said, the life, it's kind of, there's a wave. It goes up and down and up and down. There's a, creation, maintenance, and destruction, like dissolution, right? There's this whole wave. And then rather than imagining that I will be always at the top of the game and continue to ride and become more and more successful, and maybe there's a time for us to, dissolve, and then naturally, this open up a new opportunity to create something other, other beautiful things. So you just do not know, So I would invite this, mind of not knowing, that is, I don't know, what will happen, but it does not mean it's bad, this means full of, possibilities. So maybe I'll create a different kind of life, because of this difficulty. Maybe my plan wasn't, I didn't expected this difficulty, and therefore I might have to change my plan. But who knows? Maybe you'll be able to uh, arrive at, not the destination that you imagine initially, but the one that later you will realize, oh, this is a lot better. My friend, like one of my close friend, he wrote a book, and he really wished his book to become mega bestseller, right? And it did not turn out to be that way. But there was a one, female, reader, and she posts about his book on her Instagram. So he came across, and they start talking, and then they start dating, and now they are married and they have two children. So, so you may
That's
not get
amazing.
mega bestseller, but you may have a wonderful wife and two children. You never
That's
know.
how amazing. How beautiful. That's a lovely one. Okay, last one. Oneness. What is oneness?
I think we can tap into the experience of oneness when we have this attitude of not knowing, you know? When we already know something, uh, what we can know is only fragmented, small part. We cannot know totality. So in order to access to totality, we can do it only by the path of not knowing. you know so this humility of not knowing, and at the same time, this openness to not knowing. Yeah. And then what we see is this: there's no more illusory thinking, popping in, because we do not know. Whatever thought you have is something that you already know. But when we are stepping into not knowing, uh, there's no more thoughts. And when there's no more thoughts, and then you realize there's no separation. Maybe the whole world, uh, we cut it into different parts while using our thoughts, our label, our language. When those device is no longer there, then, like a baby who do not know, who haven't yet learned the language, we look around and see everything as one unifying experience. It is not to say that you do not distinguish. Of course, you still have the intellect, and you'll be able to live your life like any other human being. But rather than assuming that you already know, you turn to this mindset of not knowing, humility, and you discover oneness that is already there.
Haemin, that's such a beautiful note for us to end on, and I'm just incredibly grateful for this time. I feel like I'm learning so much from you, and just being in your presence is a calming and loving feeling that emanates from you. So I've been like a honeybee around this, and really enjoying this your presence, and I'm sure many people, whoever, even if it's one person who benefits from some of the messages here, I deeply appreciate your time for that, and so thank you for doing this. I really appreciate it, and I hope that people will go and check out When Things Don't Go Your Way, as well as the other books. And I hope that we'll get the opportunity to feed people together at some point and stand alongside each other at some point and serve food together, which will be a great wish. So thank you for that.
Yeah,
We
I
really
look forward
appreciate you.
I look forward to meeting you. If I ever go to London, I'll make sure, I join you and do whatever I could to help you. And also, I
Uh,
was so inspired by your work, and I have a lot of questions. Maybe I can ask you, after the podcast.
yes,
But thank
yeah,
you. Thank you for the opportunity.
thank you.